Meantime, two conservationist groups, the Sierra Club and the Gulf Restoration Network, are now suing the Minerals Management Services, MMS. You know that agency. It will require drillers in the Gulf of Mexico to disclose worst-case scenarios. That's what the suit's calling for. But the agency says it doesn't comment on pending litigation. For more perspective, we're joined by David Guest of Earthjustice, who represents the Sierra Club. He's in Tallahassee, Florida. David, explain to me, why are you suing the government, not BP?
Well, because the fundamental problem here is lax regulation by the Minerals Management Service. This is a case where a notice was sent to all the lessees in the Gulf of Mexico saying most of them didn't have to comply with the controlling rules, requiring disclosure of the worst-case blowout scenario and things of that sort, which are central to this disaster. This is lax regulation at its worst.
We are seeing some headlines cross that I just want to read here. According to a spokesman from BP, the company has managed to recover some oil yesterday, 6,100 barrels of what has been leaking out underwater. The recovery there, 6,100 barrels, but obviously a fair amount of contamination still happening there. David, have you run any kind of numbers on this to get a sense of what kind of economic damage may be caused?
Well, it's hard to estimate, of course, because we haven't seen the full scope of the impact of the spill yet. The spill is about roughly 10,000 square miles in surface area right now. Parts of it seem to be getting picked up by the loop current heading for Florida. Even the local impacts have been staggering. Businesses around the Gulf Coast all the way down to southeast Florida, southwest Florida are suffering just from tourists not canceling their reservations for fear of the spill. I think the true economic cost is going to be in the several billion, maybe over $10 billion. And I think they're liable for that.
You know, interestingly, I've been speaking to energy lobbyists and other experts out there, and some say, well, maybe you can count offshore drilling for oil in the U.S. as dead, but drilling for natural gas may still be alive. In fact, the case being made that it's being given more support in the wake of this disaster. Is the kind of regulation you'd like to see something you would be calling for beyond just the oil industry?
Yes, I think you really have to disclose the whole blowout scenario, not just for oil, but for gas too. It's not as dangerous, obviously. A lot of times gas formations have oil in them too. As we can see here, this formation has a lot of gas in it too. So I don't think you can really separate them quite that easily.
Do you have the intention to perhaps also go after BP?
We do not currently have an intention to go after BP itself, although I will say one thing that has us concerned, which is that BP's regional oil spill response plan represented to the government that it could take up about 430,000 barrels of oil per day that came from a worst-case oil spill. Well, we've road tested that, and we find that it's a tiny fraction of that. And that goes to the core of this issue.
Yeah, well, what we just said was 6,100 barrels of oil just yesterday managed to be captured. Thank you so much for your perspective.